Hello and welcome, I'm TC Lee, and this is my Necromancer tank build, Souleater. So this build is a general Necromancer tank build that is designed for completing PvE content, dungeons, trials, a bit of overland fun, all that kind of stuff. Please be aware that this build is not something you would use in an organised and optimised group. While this build provides a great amount of group support and it's a lot of fun to play, some aspects of the build, such as the gear, would likely not be viable if you were trying to participate in organised content such as veteran trials. If you'd like to see main tank and off tank builds suitable for veteran trials, please check out the website thetankclub.com, and we've got all builds there optimised for those particular situations. The Souleater build is a Necromancer tank that focuses on regenerating ultimate as quickly as possible. The way we do this is by combining gear sets that benefit either ulti gain, ulti regeneration, or reduce cost, and then we add a selection of skills that do a similar type of thing. The result we have is a constant supply of ultimate, most importantly the Colossus ultimate, which absolutely destroys the enemy. And we can keep using the Colossus on every single ad pull. We can often do the Colossus multiple times on boss fights, maybe even if we time everything perfectly, we'll be able to do it on cooldown on our own with just the one person, just the one Necro. In difficult situations, we can also use the build for generating the Bone Goliath ultimate or the Reanimator ultimate, which will help us to overcome difficult situations or resurrect allies if they die. It's not advised to set up the build to do that, but it's an option if you're really struggling for certain content. The Necromancer has a good range of skills that are useful for tanking. With this build, our main focus is on ultimate, however. We are utilising the Necromancer's ability to summon and conjure spirits, and then we sap the life from the corpses to gain huge amounts of ultimate. We are losing a bit of our support with this particular build. There are some common tank skills that are not being used, but as mentioned already, this isn't an optimised trial build. So first of all, our race is going to be the Nord. The reason we have chosen the Nord is it's got some really nice passives for tanking and for this particular build. So we've got the increased max health, which is really important for a tank. We've got increased max stamina, which is also very important for a tank. And then we've got the increased resistances, which help us to reduce the amount of damage that we take. With the Nord, they've also got an ultimate gaining passive. Now, 5 ultimate every 10 seconds is not a huge amount, but it's the only class that gives any type of ulti gain. So we're going to use this because we're trying to stack ultimate regeneration, and this is the only class that provides that. Our Mundus stone is the Atronach. We're using this for the Magicka recovery. Magicka recovery is very important for this build. It's a very Magicka heavy, Magicka intensive build that requires frequent casting of abilities. So we need our Magicka recovery to be as high as possible. Our food is the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. We're using this for the max health, the max stamina, and the max Magicka. And we also get health recovery with this as well. For our potions, we're just going to be using Tri-Stat potions. You can also use the Crown Tri-Restoration potions if you have those spare. The main focus is that we're getting all 3 recoveries and we're getting all 3 stats back. You can also use Essence of Magicka potions, the one that we loot from corpses. You want to be saving your Tri-Potions for bosses and for sustaining your stamina, your health, your Magicka. But during ad pulls where you're not taking too much damage, you can be drinking the Essence of Magicka potions just because we're going to need to be using them to keep one of our sets active. For our attributes, we're using 12 Magicka and 52 into health, 0 into stamina. Let's have a look at our buffed. Our buffed stat sheet, we've got 20.6k Magicka, 39.4k health, 20.8k stamina, 1.8k Magicka recovery, 1.2k health recovery, 1k stamina recovery. We've nearly got maxed out resistances, 30k spell, 31k physical. The cap is 33k. Anything over 30k is absolutely fine. We don't need to go any higher than that. Onto the equipment. So first of all, our first set is the Maelstrom One Hand and Shield, the perfected Rampaging Slash set. You don't have to use the perfected version, you can use the non-perfected that you get from normal Maelstrom. You get the perfected version from Veteran Maelstrom. There's not a lot of difference between the two. The only difference really for us is 77 Magicka recovery, so it's not vital to have the perfected version. If you're unable to do Maelstrom, you could use Seducer instead, which will give you more Magicka recovery, and Magicka recovery is very important, so you can use that instead of the Maelstrom weapons if you don't have them. For the one-hander, we're using Decisive, that gives us additional ultimate gain. We're using an Absorb Stamina enchant to maintain some extra stamina sustain. For our shield, we're using a well-fitted shield with a Tri-Stat enchant. The reason we're using the Maelstrom one-handed shield is because we're going to be using Heroic Slash, which gives us ultimate. If you follow up Heroic Slash with a fully charged heavy attack, you're able to restore 1904 Magicka and stamina. So with one heavy attack, we're able to gain both resources back. This is very, very strong because we don't have balance to Magicka sustain. If we start to run out of Magicka, we're able to just Heroic Slash, heavy attack, and we get both Magicka and stamina back with one heavy attack on our front bar with our Maelstrom one-hander. So very strong, and this is our main way of sustaining on this particular build. Our second set is Bloodspawn. The reason we're using Bloodspawn is for the ultimate gain. Now, Bloodspawn is the only monster set that provides ultimate gain. We have a 6% chance to gain 13 ultimate when we take damage. As a tank, we're always going to be taking damage, so 6% is actually not that bad from a tank's perspective. It also really helps when we're doing ad pulls, because when we do ad pulls, we've got a lot of things hitting us, we're able to generate our ultimate back quicker, and that's quite important because on ad pulls, we're going to be using our ultimate straight away. We're going to be absorbing all the corpses. We want to get that ultimate back as quickly as we can for the next ad pull and then for the next boss fight. So this is the best monster set for this particular build because it's the only one that's going to give us what we need, which is that ultimate. It does also provide spell and physical resistance. That is pretty much negligible for this because we're almost at the cap for physical and spell resistance anyway. So it's a nice little bonus. It's going to take us over the resistance cap, but it's not very necessary anyway. We're using Infused with a Tri-Stat enchant for the helmet, and we're using a Sturdy Health shoulder. You want the helmet and shoulder to be light and medium. It doesn't matter which way around you have them, but we're going with a 5-1-1 setup. So you want to have a light shoulder or helmet, and then the other one needs to be medium. For our next set, we're going to be using Arcasis. This fits in nicely with what we're trying to achieve. So we're going to be drinking potions every 30 seconds. Every time we do that, we're going to gain 44 ultimate. Not only for us, but for 3 other group members, which is really nice. When we're running through dungeons, we're gaining our ultimate. We're also giving ultimate to other people. It's also got some nice set piece bonuses. We get 2 maximum health. We get some extra armor. And then obviously we get the ultimate gain as well. For the chest piece, we're using a reinforced chest with a Tri-Stat enchant. On the waist, we're using Sturdy Health. Hands, we're using Sturdy Health. Legs, we're using Infused Tri-Stat. And on the feet, we're using Sturdy Health as well. For our last set, we're going to be using Akaviri Dragon. This set is going to reduce the cost of our ultimate by 15%. We're only using this set on the back bar so that we can use the Maelstrom weapons on the front bar to benefit from the sustain benefits from the Maelstrom weapons. This is only going to be used on the back bar, so we need to make sure our main active ultimate is our back bar ultimate. And we're only going to use our back bar ultimate, and that's because we want to benefit from the reduced cost of our ultimate. So we're going to be using Infused with an Alchemy Acceleration enchant that's going to reduce the cost, reduce the time of our potions by 8 seconds. We're then going to use a Triune with another potion cooldown enchant, and finally a Triune Magicka recovery. We don't want to use more than 1 infused potion cooldown, because if our potion cooldown goes below 30 seconds and you use a potion, if you've already used a potion and we've not reached the cooldown of 30 seconds for our Arcasis set, you're then going to have to wait extra time to get the ultimate benefit from Arcasis again. So we want to be around 30 seconds, 31, 32 seconds, just so that when we use a potion, we want to use our potions as soon as possible, but we're not going to waste the potential ultimate gain that we're going to get from Arcasis by using them too early. So we just use one infused potion cooldown. We use one triune potion cooldown so that we don't have the full 8 seconds. So that gives us 8 seconds. That one gives us 5 seconds. That way we can balance it out so we're not using our potion too soon and then having to wait a really long time to proc our cases again. To get the benefit of Akaviri Dragon, we have to use a backbar Ice Staff. We're using Ice Staff because that is a tank weapon. Even when we're not on our backbar, we benefit from the Magicka Recovery at all times, which is really nice, and the Healing Taken, which is nice as well. And then when we switch to our backbar, we get the benefit of added health, health recovery, and the reduced cost of the ultimate. For this one, we're using an infused Absorb Magicka enchant to help us sustain our Magicka cost and abilities. You could use an infused Crusher enchant if you want to provide more group support. There are some other gear options that you could use. So as we mentioned already, if you don't have Maelstrom weapons, you could use Armour of the Seducer, which is a crafted set. You could also use Akaviri Dragon on the body pieces. So if you don't have Arcasis, you could use Akaviri Dragon on the chest, the waist, the hands, the legs, and the feet. You could then use Hide of the Werewolf, which you obtain from Glenumbra Overland or Guild Traders. That gives you ultimate once every 5 seconds when you take damage. You gain 6 ultimate. So it's not quite as much ultimate as you get from Arcasis. But it's another option. So if you don't want to use Arcasis, you can use Akaviri Dragon on the body and then use Hide of the Werewolf on the weapons and the jewelry. Another option is to use Deadwater's Guile. That will give you ultimate. That will give you 15 ultimate every time you kill an enemy if you've hit it and it dies within 2 seconds of you hitting it. So you could use Deadwaters on the weapons and the jewelry as well. The problem with using Deadwaters is on boss fights when you don't kill anything, you're not going to gain any ultimate. So Arcasis is always going to work, Dragon Guard's always going to work, and Hide of the Werewolf's always going to work. So Deadwater could be used if you've got an add-on that can change your gear. You could use a trash pull setup where you use Deadwaters with Akaviri Dragon on the body pieces, and then for bosses use Hide of the Werewolf or use Arcasis. On to our abilities now. So our first ability is Pierced Armor. This is our Taunt. When we use this, the enemy is focused onto us for 15 seconds. It also debuffs the enemy, reducing their physical and spell resistance. So this is our main taunt, our melee taunt, that we're going to use to keep aggro of all of the enemies. Heroic Slash, the main reason we're using this is for the minor heroism, which grants us 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. This build is all about ultimate gain. This gives us more ultimate. It does also cause minor maim, but our main reason for using it is for the minor heroism. Stalking Blast Bones. Now the reason we're using Stalking Blast Bones is for any situation where we have Magicka to use. We've got a lot of Magicka, we've got an abundance of Magicka, we're going to be casting this as much as possible. So when we're standing next to an enemy, we cast it at the nearest enemy so that it explodes as soon as possible so that we can create a corpse. So this ability creates a corpse on death. That is the important part. We're not using it for the damage, we're not using it for anything else, we're using it because it creates a corpse on death. Hungry Scythe, this is our main healing ability. It's a very nice heal. It heals based on our max health. So the higher max health we've got, the more we're going to heal with this ability. When we use it, we also get a healing over time for 5 seconds. The more enemies we hit, we get a bigger heal. So this is a real nice heal for the Necro tank. Necrotic Potency. Now this is probably the most important skill for this build. While slotted, your damage taken is reduced by 3%, so we get reduced damage by 3% for having it slotted. The most important thing is we sap the lingering life from fresh corpses, granting us 6 ultimate. It also heals us, so we get a nice health. It's based off max health as well, so as with a tank we've got a lot of health, so we're going to get a big heal. But we get 6 ultimate for every corpse that we consume. So every time we kill an enemy, every time one of our summons dies, we're able to sap the essence from it and gain 6 ultimate every single time. So that's why Blast Bones is important. We can cast Blast Bones, and then we can use Necrotic Potency as soon as it dies, once it's created that corpse, to sap the 6 ultimate from it. For the front bar ultimate, Renewing Animation, I've got slotted. This isn't an ability that I would use. So this is purely on the bar for the near-death experience passive. So while you have a living death ability slotted your critical strike chance, with all healing abilities increased by up to 20%. So if we're really low on health and we need to heal ourselves, we heal ourselves with Hungry Scythe, but we get the benefit of increased crit healing by having renewing animation on our bar. This also backs up as an emergency button, so if the rest of you, if your group's all dead, you're the last one alive, obviously we're able to generate ultimate very quickly. We can use this ultimate. It's a very expensive ultimate, 335 ultimate to use, so it's extremely expensive. But in the situation where we need it, we can use it, and it'll also give us a lot of resources back as well. So if we do need to use it, we can use it. You could also slot Bone Goliath there if you want a self-heal, a self-shield, an increase to your own max health. You could slot that instead and use that in an emergency situation. It's a lot cheaper. 250 ultimate is a lot cheaper than what it costs to use Reanimate, so you could use that instead if you wanted to. Onto the back bar, so we've got Inner Rage, which is our range taunt, so when we need to taunt stuff in. Archers and mages that are at range, we can taunt those with our range taunt. We can also initiate a fight by using range taunt as we go in. So Inner Rage is for taunting ranged enemies. Skeletal Arcanist, we're using this once again for the corpse, so it creates a corpse on death. This is also going to do some damage. It's going to do shock damage, potentially assist with creating off balance for the group if other people are using lightning based abilities. But our main reason for using this is for the corpse that it creates when it dies. Blockade of Frost, this will help us to crowd control our enemies. So when we use this ability, we try and keep this down on the ground at all times. It will proc our enchant, so the Infused Crusher or the Infused Absorb Magicka, so whichever one you're using, you have to keep this on the ground. Recast it every 14 seconds. It'll keep recasting our back bar enchant on our staff, but also it'll crowd control the enemies. So by using an ice staff, we're able to cause a chill effect, which immobilizes enemies. So we're using that to crowd control inside dungeons and all those sorts of things where there's enemies that can be crowd controlled and immobilized. This will not immobilize bosses or elite targets, but it's very good for dealing with trash and ads inside big ant pools and all that kind of stuff. Our next ability is Beckoning Armor. This is our major resolve buff, which gives us a lot of resistances, really buffs us up so that we're nice and strong. We're able to take more damage. It also chains enemies in, so when we've range taunted all the enemies, this will pull in an enemy every 3 seconds to bring them into a stack. It also creates a corpse when it ends, so the reason we're using this rather than using something such as balance is because it creates a corpse. That is important for this build, is creating corpses, so that is the reason we're using it. The fact that it also chains enemies in is a bonus, so we don't have to run a different chain. The only problem with the chain is it's once every 3 seconds, so it can take a little while to pull enemies in. In an ad pull with a lot of enemies, if you need to chain them in faster, if you range taunt all the enemies and then cast this, wait until you've chained an enemy. As soon as you've chained one of the enemies in, recast this ability and it refreshes the 3 second timer. The 3 second timer is only there when you leave this ability to run its duration. If you recast the ability, it resets the 3 second timer. So you can chain faster with this. As long as you've got everything taunted, any ranged enemies can be chained in quicker than every 3 seconds as long as you recast the ability. But obviously that's expensive and you won't create a corpse unless 10 seconds has passed since you last casted the ability. Our next ability is Spirit Guardian. Very nice ability. While it's active, 10% of the damage we take is transferred to the spirit instead. So it takes 10% of our damage for us, which is excellent. It also heals the lowest health ally around us, so often that will be us as a tank. We'll be the lowest health ally, we'll be getting the benefit of the heal. If not, it's going to heal somebody else, which is great as well, because if somebody's lower health than us, then obviously they need the heal. So this will run for 16 seconds and just be healing anybody that needs healing. When it dies, this creates a corpse, as the theme is. We need the corpses from these abilities, so we'll get another corpse from this. This will be our 4th and last corpse that we can create with abilities. And finally, the main reason we are using this particular build is for the Colossus Ultimate. Now, we're using the Glacial Colossus because we intend on using this within dungeons and stuff. So Glacial Colossus will stun the enemies. And the reason we're using this is because it creates a really nice group debuff onto an enemy. So when we hit an enemy with Glacial Colossus, it causes major vulnerability, which increases the damage ourselves and all our allies do to all the enemies that get hit by it. So it's a great way for us to cause a lot of damage to enemies by creating major vulnerability onto them, and it just means we can do a hell of a lot of damage. In terms of passive skills that we absolutely need to have, we don't need all passives, but we do need reusable parts. When your Blast Bones, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender dies, the cost of your next one is 50% cheaper. It's very important, this passive, because we're going to be recasting all three of those abilities on a regular basis, so having reduced cost by 50% is very important. The other passives you can get, but they're not important for this build. Bone Tyrant passives, it's worth using all of these, so restoring Magicka and Stamina when an enemy dies, reduce the damage we take from damage over time abilities, increase healing received, and increase max health. It's worth getting all of those as a tank. Living Death, again, it's worth getting all of these, so you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. Near-death experience, as we mentioned already, when you've got an ability slotted, increases your critical strike chance with all healing abilities based on how bad your wounds are. When you use an ability on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate. So this works really nicely. We're going to gain 10 ultimate every 16 seconds by consuming a corpse, which we're going to be doing all the time anyway with our main ability, Necrotic Potency. And then finally, when you have a Blast Bones, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender active, your Magicka and Stamina recovery is increased by 200. So we didn't actually include that in the stat sheet before, but we've got another 200 ultimate to gain by having those abilities active. One Hand and Shield, obviously all of those, we should have all of those for this build. We're using One Hand and Shield, so all of these are important. Destruction Staff, you don't need to use the Trifocus because we don't want to be blocking with Magicka. We want to be blocking with Stamina, so don't use the Trifocus passive. All the other ones are worth getting: Penetrating Magic, Elemental Force, Ancient Knowledge. If you've got the skill points, pick up the last one. You don't need to get the last one, but you can if you've got the extra skill points. Light Armor, the main ones, we need the first three. So it's giving us extra Magicka recovery, spell resistance, and reduced cost. So the first three are the only ones that are needed from Light Armor. Medium Armor, you don't really need Dexterity, but you can take that. Windwalker is needed, and Athletics is needed as well. Heavy Armor, all of the passives for Heavy Armor are used and useful because we're using 5 pieces of Heavy. Fighters Guild, the most important thing here is to pick up Banish the Wicked. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill Undead Daedra or a Werewolf. So if we get the killing blow on any of those, we will gain an extra 9 ultimate. And there's always a chance that we can do that because we're going to have Blockade down on the ground, and we're going to be using the Colossus ultimate and also Blast Bones and the Skeletal Mage as well. So we've got a chance at getting the last hit now and again frequently on enemies, so we might get an additional 9 ultimate by doing that. For the Undaunted, we want the Undaunted command so that when we use the Synergy, we get a bunch of resources back extra on top of the benefit of getting the Synergies. Undaunted Metal as well, we want to increase our max stats, so we're using 511 to benefit from this passive, giving us an additional 6% resources. And then obviously we want our class passives as well. All of our class passives, very important. We want to take medicinal use from the alchemy passives to benefit from when we use our potions, that the effects last longer. And finally, an optional one, we can add 20 minutes to the duration of our food by putting 3 points into this one. So for our champion points, we've got our red CP, we've got 81 Ironclad, 66 Thick Skin, 56 Hardy, 56 LE Defender, 11 Heavy Armor Focus. Green CP, 44 Warlord, 14 Sprinter. We've got 64 Arcanist, 32 Tenacity, 44 in Tumbling, and 72 Shadow Ward. For the blue CP, we're using 72 Blessed and 72 Elfborn to benefit from the increase into our healing. One of the most important things here is to make sure we've got the Foresight passive. When we drink a potion, the cost of your next magic ability is reduced by 80%, and also the Vengeance passive. When you block 3 spells within 10 seconds, your next magic ability will be a critical strike, and we'll try and make sure that that's our heal. So it'll be a crit heal, guaranteed. If we get hit by 3 spells within 10 seconds and then we use our heal, it should be a crit heal. For the rest of the points, you can put them wherever you want, but the ritual tree is the best place. You can split them however you want. The main thing here is to make sure we get the last stand passive, so when we fall below 20% health, we gain major heroism. That's important to make sure we get this passive. That is the only reason we want to put 120 points into the ritual for that passive. Okay, so the main objective of this build is to farm ultimate from corpses and use your ultimate as often as possible. So here we're going to try and create our ultimate as fast as possible. So we're going to try and build up our ultimate as fast as possible. The way we're going to do that is by making sure that we've got, as we go into a fight, we've always got our ultimate ready. Pre-fight, you need to buff up with beckoning armor, your skeletal mage, your spirit guardian. We initiate combat with inner fire. You want to cast elemental blockade, and then your ultimate as soon as possible. Immediately drink a potion to proc your Arcasis after using your ultimate. You want to hit the enemy with heroic slash and then pick up taunt on any loose enemies. Leave beckoning armor to chain things in and work its magic, pulling in all the ranged enemies. Use blast bones on cooldown as often as possible when you're settled into a fight and you don't really have a lot to do. This creates corpses on the ground almost straight away. When you have corpses from either your summons or dead enemies, sap them quickly with necrotic potency. If you have your ultimate, use it again unless the enemies are almost all dead, and then save it for the next ad pull. If you want a boss fight, wait until the major vulnerability cooldown has expired. On boss fights especially, if you recast your skeletal mage and your spirit guardian after 8 seconds, they will create corpses. And the same will happen if you recast beckoning armor after 10 seconds. So as long as the summon abilities run half of their duration, you can recast them and gain corpses. So skeletal mage and spirit guardian both run for 16 seconds. If you recast them on 8 seconds, that's half the duration. Create a corpse. If you do it sooner, it won't create a corpse. So you need to be halfway through the ability and recast it to get the benefit from having the corpses there. These abilities should be recast often before they expire just to create the corpses. By recasting these abilities often, combined with spamming blast bones whenever possible, the enemy's dying, and you keep using necrotic potency, you'll gain huge amounts of ultimate. You absolutely have got to make sure you're drinking potions on cooldown for Arcasis. Bloodspawn will just work automatically in the background and you'll benefit from the ultimate gain whenever it's active. The benefit of Akaviri Dragon will only come into play when you switch to your back bar. So at this point, when you switch to your back bar, your ultimate cost will be reduced. If you begin to run low on resources, cast Heroic Slash and then immediately heavy attack to proc the Maelstrom set bonuses. If you have a lot of trouble playing in this way after some practice, you could switch out beckoning armor and slot balance instead, which will give you unlimited magic sustain for spamming your corpse creating abilities. You could also try using a restoration staff on the back bar. With the passives from the restoration staff, you'll gain extra magic for heavy attacking with the resto staff. So you could use that as an additional sustain method if you're struggling with the frost staff. Thank you very much for watching. That was my Necromancer tank build, Souleater. If you'd like to see more builds and tank information, make sure you check out my website, thetankclub.com, the absolute best resource for ESO tank related information. If you've got any questions about any of the builds or anything tank related, make sure you join my Tank Club Discord. There's over 4,500 members in there that are happy to help answer any tank related questions that you might have. The link for that is in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.